These flowers are sure pretty, but I'm not gonna lie, this road is very long and grueling. So it's about 5:20 in the morning on Wednesday, July 7th, 2021. I'm at the beginning of the Lake Como Road, or Blanca Peak Road. I'm going to try to make my way up Blanca Peak today. And I believe it is that summit pointing up right there. Got a long ways to go. I'm going to actually see if I can make it a little bit farther up the road before I start walking. Blanca Peak is the fourth highest mountain in Colorado and the highest mountain in the Sangre de Cristo range, a name given to the range by Spanish explorers who were in the region as early as the late 1500s and inspired by the range's reddish hues at sunrise and sunset. The mountain also had figured heavily in the Navajo worldview, being the eastern of four sacred mountains corresponding to each of the four directions. By the time the Wheeler and Hayden teams surveyed the region in the mid-1870s, they found that the name Sierra Blanca had already been in use for some time for the distinctive group of mountains that lies south of the Great Sand Dunes and north of Fort Garland, in reference to its high snow-capped peaks. In keeping with this distinction, the Hayden survey called the highest peak in the group Blanca Peak. This view was taken from a plane flight I was on last month from Phoenix to Denver and shows the entire Blanca group from roughly the northwest. Blanca Peak is surrounded by a number of lower summits, including the 14ers Mount Lindsay, Ellingwood Point, and Little Bear Peak. This view was taken from the northwest while heading south on Highway 17. These mountains, like much of the Sangre de Cristo range, rise abruptly from the surrounding flatness with a minimum of foothills, thereby having an imposing and majestic appearance. It's about 5:35 a.m. now. I was able to make it maybe a couple miles or so at this point it's gotten rough enough that I'm just going to go ahead and park here and start on foot. There's a long ways to go today. So this was my first time in this group of mountains, and here I climbed the standard northwest slopes route up Blanca Peak. But due to the low trailhead, it is very long with a very large elevation gain. This is a more general map showing the entire route from start to finish. The starting point shown here can be reached by turning east from Highway 150 onto the dirt Lake Como Road and going about 1.5 or 2 miles northeast up the road from there to roughly 8,000 feet, and parking off to the side and setting out on foot from there. Most any vehicle can at least make it this far up the road. More capable vehicles can make it considerably farther up the road, and there are numerous pull-offs, but the road does become quite rough. Now, given the daunting endurance stats for this route, if you can't make it much farther beyond 8,000 feet on the road by vehicle, I actually would recommend breaking this climb up into 2 days. A lot of people backpack up the road to Lake Como at about 11,800 feet and then climb to the high summits the following morning. This has the advantage of being less exhausting, as well as keeping you off the highest elevations when the potentially hazardous weather tends to roll in. During the rest of this video, I will be showing more detailed maps of the individual stretches of the route. Anyway, enjoy the footage. So, still walking up the road, which as you can see is quite rocky, and this route overall goes from start to finish, goes in an overall northeast direction, obviously with some twists and turns along the way. So I'm up here now at about 8,700 feet or so, and if I'm on this, what I'm sure is a temporary level stretch of this road. So now, following that brief level stretch back there, and actually a little bit of a dip, we're now back on a fairly steep incline again. I'm on a northward section of this road now, probably at about 9,000 feet, so probably only a little over 5,000 more feet to gain, so doing pretty good. So I'm continuing on this northward section of the road right now, and about 9,300 feet up here you have a smaller road that continues on straight. Don't take that. The main road now switches back right here up this way for a minute. These flowers are sure pretty, but I'm not gonna lie, this road is very long and grueling. So up here at about 9,600 feet, a little ways after that northward directed section of switchbacks, we're now turning on this road back overall toward the northeast again, and it's getting a lot rougher. more heavily wooded section. And there's the road intersection. I'm probably getting up here close to 10,000 feet now. And to think this is the elevation where a lot of these 14er trails begin. Yep. Long ways to go yet. And here now, I'm coming down this descending stretch of the road. I don't want it to do too much of that though. So following that short descent, I'm down here on a bit of a level stretch here. Kind of a nice reprieve, I'll have to admit. So I'm up here, maybe 10-2 or so, and after that stretch of reprieve back there, I am headed back on the incline again. This is maybe the biggest barrier to vehicles I've come across so far. So continuing up the road about maybe 10-4, 10-5 or so, still headed in a roughly northeast direction, and this stretch of the road is steadily an incline, but quite a bit gentler than it was on some of its earlier stretches back there, so I'm fine with that. I'm going to come up now to this creek crossing. I'm going to put the camera away though. So I made it across that creek okay. It's a little tricky, particularly the first part of it there. We could go across those slightly submerged rocks, a little bit slippery. So now the road, since a little before that creek crossing, has begun to veer in a more eastward direction as I head up towards the lake here at about 10:06 or so, maybe 10:07. So I imagine I'm getting close to 11,000 feet up here now. This eastward headed stretch of the road up here has been pretty darn steep. Finally emerged into some sunshine up here. And we're beginning to be able to see the upper parts here. Still continuing along as the view continues to open up. Up there, as I just showed you just before, is Little Bear Peak, which rises to just a little bit over 14,000. Continuing along up here just after that, we can now see our destination for the day come into view, Blanca Peak there, which is just to the northeast of Little Bear. Don't be intimidated now. So I'm kind of pleasantly surprised. I'm already up here at about 11,800 feet. I finally arrived at the lake up here, Lake Como. And what you have to do when you arrive at this lake is continue along what is still the road, which kind of doesn't really look like it. But we continue along this and kind of follow along the north shores of the lake. And at the end of the lake, we kind of wrap around its east shores, where the road continues on for just a little bit. And now I'm kind of wrapping around, like I said, along the east end of the lake. And you have to cross this to reach the continuation of the road up there. Let's see if I can find an easier way. Yeah, right here. And keep going up this damn road.
Still continuing up the stretch of road following Lake Como back there. So I'm up here probably nearing about 12.2, and looks like I'm going to have no choice but to get my feet into the water just a little bit going across this. And it's not very deep. Don't get too wet here. Now you pass by to the left of this smaller lake here. And here we have another similarly shallow water crossing. And these final upper stretches of the road do currently have a lot of water running across. So now I've arrived up here at about 12,200 feet, and I'm going to pass by on the right side of these lakes right here, which are known as the Blue Lakes. So continuing along the south side of the Blue Lakes here, about 12.2, still heading along the road here. Uh-oh, what happened? Looks like the end of the road. Oh, nice, here's this trail. This will take that. So now I'm done with the road and we're onto this trail and going in a approximately northward direction after the end of the road there. And the next stage of this is going to be to the left of this waterfall here. I'm going to be heading zigzagging up that rock slope for a few hundred vertical feet till I get to a little bit easier terrain at the top of the rocks. And yet another creek crossing just before the talus slope here. Now I'm headed up these aforementioned rocky, zigzaggy talus slopes here. So far the path is fairly discernible, not too bad. So I seem to have reached the top of that initial talus slope there above the Blue Lakes, and now I've reached a little bit gentler terrain here. Did I say gentler back there? Well, not much gentler. Probably up here at maybe roughly 12.6 or so at this point. And so now you come up here to this smaller lake, and it looks like you're supposed to pass along its near shoreline. You see all these cairns. Go ahead and do that. Pretty soon here we'll be coming up to Crater Lake, a little bit higher. Oh, I'm ending up winding along around the length of that smaller aforementioned lake and continuing through this rocks, and stretch is marked pretty decently by cairns. So yeah, up here close to 12.7, come to another small lake, which is not Crater Lake. You pass by on the left side of this lake, and here's the trail's continuation. We're going to wrap around the length of this smaller lake as well, toward that direction. Well, finally encountering a little bit of snow up here. The path is getting rockier here. So I've finally winded my way up here to Crater Lake. I'm probably coming up on about 13,000 here pretty soon. See, the lake's still ice covered. Pretty neat. So I'm continuing along in a northeast direction right after passing by Crater Lake. And the next challenge of this climb is going to be making my way up the side of the mountain there, I believe, by way of this area of ledges. And then from there, the rest of the way up the side, till finally, at some point, the path intersects the northwest slopes, and we go up those slopes to the top. Look at that impressive slab of rock there. Wow. This rocky trail after Crater Lake has been pretty well cairned so far. Looks like it's potentially going to get a little more difficult to follow up in this stretch here as I make my way up toward this ledge section. Actually, this talus stretch leading up to the ledge area has turned out to be pretty easy to discern. The path, as you can see, is pretty discernible and it's pretty well cairned. So now I've gotten up into some of this ledgy area, and there's a fair amount of water running down these slabs of rock, so probably worth being cautious about that. see how easy the path is to negotiate on this section. Yeah, definitely some water and mud. So I'm still going up these talus slopes at maybe about 13.5 or so, and the path has gotten, or has been, I should say, more rugged and a little harder to follow. Oh, look at that. I finally made it up here to the ridge, to the northwest ridge, at about 13,000.
So this was after I had finally made it up to the northwest ridge at about 13,800 feet. This is looking south-southeast at the final stretch to the top. From this point, there are about 500 or 600 vertical feet left to go. The path goes just right of the ridge crest as you go up.
Anyways, I'm going to get started. Hopefully see you at the top. Alright, so I'm getting started in a roughly south direction up this northwest ridge of Blanca Peak here. Looks like it's going to be quite a boulder hopping adventure the rest of the way up here. Still looks like a long ways up. Yeah, you can see there are cairns on this, but this final finish is pretty rugged nevertheless. I'm looking down the left side there. Yeah, the end is in sight. Either go up this or go around to the right. Check the right first. Yep. Almost there. Wow. Look at that. Wow. Little ladybug up here. am at the top of Blanca Peak, 14,345 feet high. It took me, believe it or not, 6 hours and 10 minutes to get all the way up here. So it was a long haul. Can't wait to go back down through all that and then drive all the way back to Golden for 4.5 hours. Whoopee! Anyway, see you at the bottom. So I'm heading down the final ridge stretch of this mountain, and be really careful as you're coming down this thing. The final pitch on this, up and down this mountain, is no joke, believe me. Can't wait to have a nice cold beer later on. Probably a lot later. Anyways, yeah, no joke. So I'm back here at the Como Lake Road parking area. I just drove the car back down from where I had it parked a little bit farther up. It took me 10 hours and 45 minutes to make it from there all the way to the top of Blanca Peak and back down to the car. And that's obviously not because it is the 4th highest peak in Colorado, but rather because you have to start so low. I mean, starting at 8,000 feet will do that. And I drove, like I said, up the road 2 miles, maybe 1.5. So maybe I started at 100 feet. But regardless, the total endurance stats were about 6,400 feet in elevation gain total, and maybe 16 miles altogether. So I'd say, just from a strictly objective endurance stats perspective, this could very well be the hardest single mountain I've ever climbed. And probably the worst part about it, I don't want to say worst because I do love doing this, as you know, but probably the least favorable part about it was walking back down the initial part of the road. I didn't think I was ever going to get back down. I kept looking down at the San Luis Valley and recognizing how far I still was above it, and I didn't think I was ever going to get it down. Anyway, still enjoyable nonetheless. Blanca Peak. Anyways, see you on the next mountain.